Margaret Chen pulled her thin jacket tighter against the biting December wind, her weathered hands trembling as she arranged the cardboard box she'd call home for another night. The makeshift shelter sat in a narrow alley behind Singapore's glittering Orchard Road, where Christmas lights twinkled mockingly above designer boutiques her children now frequented. She watched through the gaps between buildings as her daughter Grace, unrecognizable in her Prada heels and perfectly styled hair, exited Louis Vuitton with several shopping bags. The sight sent a familiar ache through Margaret's chest, not from want of material things, but from the memory of when that same daughter would crawl into her lap, seeking comfort after a nightmare. "Deha, Mama, you'll never leave me, right?" Grace would ask then. "Deha." Oh, the bitter irony. Margaret's arthritic fingers traced the torn edges of the only photograph she'd managed to keep, a family portrait from 15 years ago. Her 3 children smiled back at her. Grace, the ambitious one, Michael, the calculated one, and Sarah, the youngest, who'd once had the kindest heart. The photo was taken just weeks before their father's death, before the business collapsed, before they'd all changed. The young couple walked past, their designer shopping bags rustling. The woman's eyes met Margaret's for a brief moment before quickly looking away, pulling her companion faster along the path. Margaret was used to being invisible now, but she hadn't always been. That's what her late mother's estate was worth, carefully hidden away in Swiss accounts and property investments across Asia. Only Margaret and her elderly lawyer, Mr. Liu, knew about it. Her children, so quick to discard her when the family business failed, had no idea their grandmother had left everything to their worthless mother. "Patam Pungnan," Mr. Liu had said during their secret meeting last week. "You must tell them, let me help you reclaim your life." But Margaret had a different plan, one that would test not just her children's character, but her own capacity for forgiveness. A drop of rain hit the photograph, and Margaret carefully tucked it into her plastic-wrapped bundle of precious belongings. Thunder rolled overhead as the infamous Singapore afternoon storm approached. She should move to the covered walkway near the mall entrance, but she couldn't bear to watch another evening of her children's displays of wealth, while they believed their mother was living in some distant shelter, having chosen to leave them. The truth was far different from the story they'd told themselves. Biev, reflection question. Have you ever misjudged someone's true worth? Not in money, but in character. Share your thoughts in the comments below. As the rain began to fall in earnest, Margaret noticed a familiar figure hurrying through the crowd. Sarah, her youngest, was arguing with someone on her phone. "The investment must happen tonight," Sarah was saying, her voice carrying on the wind. "Everything we've worked for depends on it. I don't care what it takes." Liev. Margaret sank deeper into the shadows, her heart racing. She'd overheard enough of her children's business dealings lately to know they were in trouble, the kind of trouble that could destroy everything they'd built on the ashes of their family's former life. Little did they know their salvation or destruction rested in the hands of the homeless woman they passed every day without a second glance, the same hands that had once bandaged their scraped knees, wiped away their tears, and would soon either catch them as they fell or let them face the consequences of their choices. Margaret pulled a worn notebook from her bag, its pages filled with careful observations of her children's lives over the past year. Tonight would change everything. Mr. Leye would be setting the pieces in motion, and soon her children would face a test that would determine not just their futures, but the very essence of who they'd become. She was too busy watching Sarah disappear into the crowd, wondering if any trace remained of the daughter who once gave her allowance to street musicians and rescued stray cats. The morning sun cast long shadows through the glass towers of Singapore's financial district, as Michael Chen strode into his corner office at Chen Holdings International. At 35, he was the youngest CEO in the building, though the company's recent performance kept him awake most nights. He paused at his floor-to-ceiling window, straightening his bespoke suit's sleeves, a habit he'd developed to hide his anxiety from employees. Secretary's voice crackled over the intercom. "Your sister Grace is here. Dio. Send her in." Michael's jaw tightened. Early morning visits from Grace usually meant trouble. "Dio." Grace burst through the door in a cloud of expensive perfume and barely contained panic. "We have a problem. The Taiwanese investors are backing out." "What?" Michael's carefully maintained composure cracked. "That's $60 million we're counting on. Sarah's real estate development can't proceed without it." They received an anonymous tip about our company's financial. Grace paced the office, her Louboutins clicking against the marble floor. Someone knows, Michael. Someone knows we've been cooking the books. Michael fell into his leather chair, memories flooding back unbidden. Their mother's voice echoed from years ago. Success built on lies will crumble like a house of cards, Michael. Your father and I built this company on trust. Her disappearance 5 years ago had been a blessing in disguise, allowing them to rebuild without her outdated moral constraints. The intercom buzzed again. Miss Sarah Chen is calling on line 1. Have you seen the morning's business news? Someone's been buying up shares in our subsidiaries through a shell company. We're at risk of a hostile takeover. Michael studied his sisters' faces, so different from the young women who used to bring their mother breakfast in bed every Sunday. Grace, now 33, had transformed herself from a cheerful art student into a corporate shark, handling their international acquisitions with ruthless efficiency. The designer clothes and carefully highlighted hair couldn't quite hide the shadows under her eyes. Sarah, the baby at 30, was visible on the video call, her face sharp with ambition. She'd abandoned her dreams of becoming a teacher to manage their real estate division, proving herself the most cutthroat of them all. The sister who once rescued injured birds now orchestrated the demolition of historic neighborhoods for luxury condominiums. She's in some shelter in Malaysia. That's what she wanted, to run away when things got difficult. It was her, Sarah insisted, outside Orchard Road. She swallowed hard. She was homeless, living in a cardboard box. Michael's hand clenched around his Mont Blanc pen until his knuckles turned white. You're mistaken. And even if it was her, she made her choice. We offered her an apartment, remember? She refused our help. None of them mentioned how that help had come with conditions: sign over her remaining shares, admit her incompetence in running the company, agree to stay away from business decisions. Their mother's refusal had felt like betrayal at the time. Now, something like shame stirred in Michael's chest. Do you ever wonder, Grace said softly, staring out at the city their family had helped build, if we were wrong? About mother, about everything. Reflection question. When was the last time you had to choose between family and success? What did you choose? And do you still stand by that decision? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more compelling family stories. A knock at the door interrupted them. Michael's secretary entered with a thick envelope. This just arrived by courier, marked urgent. Michael opened it with unsteady hands, his siblings watching intently. His face went pale as he read, Mother's old law firm. He looked up, shock written across his features. They're calling for an emergency shareholders meeting. Apparently there's been a challenge to our control of the company. Someone claiming to represent our grandmother's estate. She died 15 years ago, left everything to father. Deparson. Apparently not everything, Michael said, scanning the documents. There's something else. A note. A note. He pulled out a handwritten letter. The elegant Chinese characters instantly recognizable. Their mother's handwriting. My dear children, by the time you read this, you will have begun to feel the ground shifting beneath your feet. Consider it your first lesson. Everything you build on a foundation of lies will eventually collapse. But remember, I taught you to swim before I ever let you near deep water.
If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me keep bringing you more amazing love stories. Alright, back to the story.
The choice of whether you sink or swim now rests in your hands. With love always, Mother Ace. Grace's hand flew to her mouth. Sarah's face on the screen had lost all color. Michael stared at the signature, remembering how those same hands had guided his when he was learning to write, had wiped away his tears after his first business failure, had tried to stop him from making the biggest mistake of his life. She knows, he said quietly. She knows everything. The morning sun continued its climb over Singapore, illuminating 3 siblings who had everything and nothing all at once. In an alley across town, their mother added another entry to her notebook, watching as the pieces of her carefully constructed lesson began to fall into place. The true test of her children's character was about to begin. The lobby of Liu & Associates gleamed with old money and discretion. Margaret sat in a high-backed leather chair, transformed from her street clothes into an elegant silk cheongsam. Her silver hair was expertly styled, her weathered hands freshly manicured, After a year of voluntary homelessness, the simple act of being clean felt like luxury. Are you certain about this, Madam Chen? Mr. Liu asked, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. We could simply reveal your inheritance and end their suffering. Assuming. Margaret watched Singapore's evening traffic through the floor-to-ceiling windows. They're not suffering from lack of money, old friend. They're suffering from who they've become. The intercom buzzed. The Chen siblings have arrived. Chen siblings have arrived. Margaret stood, smoothing her dress. Show them to the main conference room. But don't announce me yet. Michael took the power position at the head of the table, while Grace perched nervously on his right. Sarah's arrival was last and most dramatic, her heels announcing her presence before she appeared. Mr. Liu entered with an armful of documents. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. Let's skip the pleasantries, Michael interrupted. Who's trying to take over our company? Not trying, Mr. Liu corrected, distributing folders. Succeeding. As of this morning, Lotus Holdings owns 51% of Chen Holdings International's voting shares. Sarah slapped her folder down. That's impossible. We control all the voting shares. You controlled 49%, Mr. Liu said. The remaining 51% has been held in trust since your grandmother's death. A trust that matured last month. Grace flipped frantically through the documents. This can't be legal. Father inherited everything when grandmother died. Your father inherited the public assets, Mr. Liu explained. Your grandmother's private holdings, which included controlling interest in the family company, were left to her chosen heir. Who? Michael demanded. The conference room door opened. Margaret stood in the entrance, watching as 3 pairs of eyes widened in shock. Sarah's glass of water slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. Grace's perfectly maintained composure cracked, tears welling in her eyes. Michael stood so quickly his chair toppled backward. Mother, Grace whispered. Margaret walked to the window, her reflection overlaying the city skyline. Did you know your grandmother was a beggar once? She built her fortune from a single coin given in kindness. She believed true character is revealed not by how we handle wealth, but by how we treat those who have nothing. So she turned to face her children. You failed her test. All of you, living on the streets, watching my own children walk past without a glance, observing as you demolished low-income housing for luxury condos, seeing you fire loyal employees to hide your fraudulent books. Margaret's voice remained gentle, but her words cut deep. Each of you had countless chances to show compassion, to remember who you were before money became your only god. Tsopo. Michael found his voice. You let us think you'd abandoned us. Let us believe you were destitute. It was easier than admitting you'd forced me out of my own company. Easier than acknowledging you'd become exactly what your father and I raised you not to be. This contains evidence of every illegal transaction, every falsified document, every betrayal of trust you've committed over the past 5 years. Enough to send all of you to prison. Margaret sat at the head of the table, where Michael had been moments before. That depends on you. I'm offering you a choice. Mr. Liu distributed new documents. Option 1, you resign from the company, forfeit your shares, and walk away with enough money to live comfortably, but modestly. The company will be restructured, the illegal activities reported, and your careers in business will be effectively over. You'll work your way up, from the bottom, earning every promotion through merit and ethical behavior. You'll also spend weekends working in homeless shelters and rehabilitation centers. After 5 years of proven character reform, you may return to management position. If you're enjoying this story of redemption and justice, make sure to like and subscribe. Have you ever had to choose between pride and redemption? Share your experience in the comments. Michael laughed bitterly. And if we refuse both options, then I release this evidence to the authorities tomorrow morning. Margaret's voice softened. But I'm hoping you'll choose wisdom over pride, like I once had to. Margaret smiled sadly. Because 30 years ago she gave me the same choice. I was becoming exactly what you are now, prioritizing profit over people, success over soul. She showed me who I was becoming, And I chose to change. She stood, walking to each of her children in turn. She touched Michael's cheek, squeezed Grace's shoulder, took Sarah's trembling hand. You have until midnight to decide. Choose wisely, my darlings. Not for me, not for the money, but for who you truly want to be. The homeless woman outside Orchard Road, that was really you. Yes, she left them there, 3 humbled titans of industry, faced with the hardest choice of their lives. Through the one-way glass, she watched them break down, years of pretense crumbling as they confronted who they'd become. Grace spoke first, her voice small. Do you remember when we used to bring her breakfast in bed every Sunday? Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes. And how she'd save her bonus every year to buy school supplies for the children at the orphanage. He was teaching us, Michael said quietly. All those years, she was showing us what true success looks like. Margaret smiled, hope blooming in her heart as she watched her children remember who they were meant to be. The choice was theirs now, and dawn broke over Singapore as Margaret sat in her mother's old garden, now restored to its former glory atop the Chen Holdings building. The air was thick with the scent of orchids and morning dew. Her children had made their choice last night. Option 2. Now came the harder part, following through. The garden door opened, and Michael appeared in jeans and a plain white shirt, looking younger without his usual power suit. You wanted to see me before I start my new position. Your first assignment is in shipping and receiving, Margaret said, pouring him tea. The same place your father started. Michael's hands shook slightly as he took the cup. The board meeting is in an hour. Everyone will see me working in the warehouse. Duh. Yes, Margaret said simply. They will. Across town, Grace stood in front of Happy Horizons Elderly Care Center, clutching her volunteer badge. Her designer clothes had been replaced with simple scrubs. An elderly woman shuffled past, squinting at her. Tuh. You look like someone, the woman said. That rich girl on TV. The one who closed down our old community center to build fancy shops. Grace swallowed hard. I am that person. Or I was. Inside the corporate tower, Sarah sat at a tiny desk in the customer service department, handling complaints about the very luxury developments she'd once championed. Her first caller was a single mother whose family had been displaced by one of Sarah's projects. Please, the woman begged. My children's school is in this district. We've lived here for 20 years. Sarah's finger hovered over the standard rejection macro she would have used just yesterday. Instead, she opened a new document and began to type, Proposal. Affordable Housing Integration Plan. Margaret watched these scenes unfold through the various messages and updates. Mr. Liu brought her throughout the morning, but the real test was yet to come. At precisely 10 a.m., the boardroom filled with Chen Holdings' top executives and major shareholders. They'd been summoned for an emergency meeting, and the tension was palpable. Margaret sat at the head of the table, Mr. Liu at her side, as she revealed the truth about the company's recent activities and her children's roles in them. The company will undergo a complete ethical restructuring, she announced. All fraudulent dealings will be corrected. Those displaced by our developments will be compensated. Every corrupt contract will be renegotiated fairly. The Kuntra children, a board member asked. The architects of these schemes. Margaret pressed a button, and the large screen behind her lit up with 3 live feeds. Michael hauling boxes in the warehouse, Grace helping elderly residents with their morning exercises, and Sarah drafting her housing proposal. They're learning the value of honest work and human dignity, Margaret said. I expect every executive in this room to treat them as you would any entry-level employee. No special privileges, no shortcuts. The board erupted in whispers. Margaret held up her hand for silence. I understand some of you were complicit in these activities. You have until the end of the day to come forward voluntarily. Those who do will be offered the same chance at redemption as my children. Those who don't, she let the implication hang in the air. As the meeting adjourned, Margaret received 3 text messages in quick succession. Michael, the warehouse manager just made me clean up a coffee spill in front of everyone. Grace, Mrs. Wong at the care center recognized me from when we evicted her last year. She shared her lunch with me. Sarah, my supervisor rejected my proposal's first draft. Said I need to actually talk to the affected families first. She's right. Is it possible to fully make amends for past mistakes? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow for more chapters in this family saga. You know, by evening, Exhaustion was evident on her children's faces as they gathered in the garden. Michael's hands were blistered from manual labor. Grace's perfect manicure was chipped from helping with physical therapy. Sarah's eyes were red from crying after visiting the neighborhood she'd helped destroy. "Since the day you presented me with those resignation papers," Margaret replied. "I could have fought you legally then. Instead, I chose to fight for your souls. Do you know how many nights I've woken up thinking about you out in the rain? Because you needed to feel what true loss is like," Margaret said. "Not just of money or power, but of humanity. Your grandmother did the same for me." Sarah looked up from her notebook, where she'd been scribbling ideas for community rehabilitation. "Tell us about that. About when you were like us." Margaret touched the jade pendant at her throat. Her mother's last gift. "Another time, for now. You need to rest. Tomorrow will be harder." "Harder?" Michael frowned. "The paro. The press releases go out. Everyone will know what happened at Chen Holdings, what you did, and what you're doing to make it right." Their mother had just handed them their second test. Could they face public humiliation with the same grace they'd shown in private redemption? "The media will crucify us," Grace said quietly. "Yes," Margaret agreed. "And you will accept it with humility, learn from it, and keep working to be better. That's what true leadership looks like." As her children left the garden one by one, Margaret noticed small changes already. Michael held the door for a cleaning lady he wouldn't have even seen yesterday. Grace stopped to help a security guard pick up dropped papers. Sarah paused to actually look at the family photographs lining the hallway. But the real challenges were just beginning. Tomorrow would bring media scrutiny, public outrage, and the temptation to fall back into old patterns. Margaret opened her notebook, no longer recording their failures, but now documenting their steps toward redemption. The night air carried the scent of jasmine as she wrote, "Day one of their new lives. They chose wisdom over pride. Now let's see if they choose perseverance over comfort." 2 months into their redemption journey, Singapore's business community was still buzzing about the Chen family saga. Outside Chen Holdings, reporters huddled in the morning drizzle, hoping to catch a glimpse of the disgraced siblings at their new position. But today would give them a very different story. Dewa. Margaret sat in her office, reviewing a manila envelope Mr. Lua had just delivered. The documents inside confirmed what she'd long suspected. Her children's corruption went deeper than even she had known. "They're here," Mr. Lua announced softly. "Dewa." Michael entered first, his warehouse uniform now fitting him naturally. Grace followed, wearing her care center scrubs, and Sarah came last, clutching a community feedback report. They'd grown leaner, humbler, their designer watches replaced with practical timepieces, their expensive haircuts grown out. "Dewa, someone leaked our previous dealings with the Indonesian mining project," Michael said without preamble. "It's all over the morning news." Margaret laid out 3 sets of documents. "This isn't a leak. I released the information." "Dewa." Silence was absolute. "But we've been doing everything you asked," Grace protested. "Working from the bottom, helping people, making amends." "You have," Margaret agreed. "But true redemption requires complete honesty. These documents show that you were laundering money through children's charities in Jakarta, using orphanages as fronts for embezzlement." "Dewa." Sarah sank into a chair, her face ashy. "How did you?" "Our grandmother taught me to always look deeper than the surface," Margaret said. "While you thought I was homeless, I was actually traveling, unraveling every thread of your deceptions. What I found broke my heart." She pressed a button on her desk, and the wall screen flickered to life. Images appeared. Children in rundown orphanages, elderly people evicted from their homes, workers in unsafe conditions, all victims of her children's secret dealings. "The money you stole didn't just disappear into offshore accounts," Margaret continued. "It was taken from real people, people who trusted the Chen name." "Navy." Michael stepped forward, his warehouse-toughened hands clenched. "We can fix this. Give us a chance to make it right. Like the chance you gave these people?" Margaret's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "The choice is no longer yours to make." "Maybe." She pressed another button, and the office doors opened. Police officers entered, followed by officials from the Financial Crimes Unit. "Mother, please," Grace whispered, tears streaming down her face. We're changing. You've seen it. Yes, you're changing, Margaret acknowledged. But change without consequences isn't redemption. It's just better acting. As the officers approached, Margaret held up her hand. However, I haven't given up on you yet. She nodded to Mr. Liu, who distributed new documents to the officers and her children. These are detailed confessions and restitution plans prepared with evidence of all your crimes, Margaret explained. Sign them, and the charges will be reduced. You'll serve 6 months in separate minimum security facilities, followed by 5 years of supervised community service. Prison? Sarah's voice cracked. Think of it as a retreat, Margaret said. A time to reflect on who you were, who you are, and who you want to become. Can justice and mercy coexist? What would you do if you had to choose between protecting your loved ones and doing what's right? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for the next chapter in this powerful story of redemption. Michael stared at the confession in his hands. The warehouse manager. He told me yesterday that I'm the hardest worker he's seen in years. And Mrs. Wong at the care center, Grace added softly. She's teaching me her family's dumpling recipe. My community housing proposal was approved this morning, Sarah whispered. We were going to break ground next month. All of that can continue, Margaret assured them. After you've paid your debt to society, real change requires real consequences. She stood, walking to each of her children in turn. Your grandmother sent me to live in a Buddhist monastery for a year when she caught me embezzling funds. It was the greatest gift she could have given me. A year of your life just taken away? Michael asked. No, Margaret corrected. A year of my life given back to me. In the silence and simplicity, I found myself again. She touched his cheek. Now I'm giving you the same gift. The siblings looked at each other. Years of shared secrets and schemes passing between them. Finally, Michael picked up a pen. I'll go first, he said quietly. For Father. For the company he built honestly. Grace followed, her tears falling on the confession. For all the people we hurt. Zara was last, her hand trembling. For you, Mother. For believing we could be better. As the officers led them away, Margaret felt her own tears finally fall. Mr. Liu touched her shoulder gently. Are you certain about this, Madam Chen? The press will be brutal. Margaret watched through the window as her children were escorted to separate police cars. Already reporters were swarming, cameras flashing. My mother taught me that true love sometimes means letting your children fall, she said, but always being there to help them stand again. She opened her notebook one last time, making a final entry. Today my children chose truth over freedom, responsibility over reputation. Their real redemption begins now. The morning sun broke through Singapore's clouds, casting long shadows across the city. In those shadows, 3 police cars carried the Chen siblings toward their next lesson in becoming the people their parents had raised them to be. And in her office high above, their mother began planning for their return. 4 months into their 6-month sentences, Singapore's tropical heat beat down on the minimum security facility where Michael served his time. He sat in the prison garden he'd helped create, dirt under his fingernails, watching butterflies dance around the vegetables he'd planted. A guard approached with a newspaper. Thought you should see this, Chen. The headline made his stomach drop. Chen Holdings faces collapse. Major investors pull out after family scandal. Across the city in the women's facility, Grace received the same news during her weekly call with Mr. Liu. The company's losing millions, he explained gently. Your mother's transparency policy revealed more systemic corruption than anyone anticipated. Decades of hidden rot. We're in another wing of the same facility. Sarah stared at the financial reports she'd been allowed to receive. Chen Holdings stock had plummeted 70% in a single day. Their mother's efforts to clean house had revealed corruption so deeply embedded that removing it threatened to bring down the entire structure. But it was the evening news that delivered the cruelest blow to all 3 siblings. Their mother, Margaret Chin, had been hospitalized after collapsing during a board meeting. Exhaustion and severe stress, the reporters said. Sources say she's been working 20-hour days trying to save both the company and her imprisoned children's future. In his cell that night, Michael pressed his forehead against the cool concrete wall. The simple bed, the plain clothes, the strict routine, he'd adapted to it all. But knowing his mother was suffering while trying to fix their mistakes was unbearable. Grace spent her night shift in the prison laundry facility folding sheets with shaking hands, remembering how her mother used to iron her school uniforms every morning, no matter how tired she was from late meetings. Sarah sat in the prison library, surrounded by the business law books she'd been studying, seeing for the first time how many lives their financial schemes had really touched. She'd thought prison would be their darkest hour. She'd been wrong. The next morning, all 3 siblings received the same message. Their mother wanted to see them. They were transported separately to the hospital, under guard, and led to a private room. Margaret lay in the hospital bed, looking smaller and more fragile than they'd ever seen her. The jade pendant still hung at her throat, but her face was pale, her silver hair limp against the pillow. "My children." She smiled weakly. "Don't look so worried. It's just exhaustion." "This is our fault," Grace whispered, her prison-issued shoes squeaking on the hospital floor as she moved closer. "Your grandmother always said, the truth costs, but lies cost more." Michael stood at the window, his prison uniform a stark contrast to the luxury condos visible in the distance, many of them built with their fraudulent funds. "The company's dying. The corrupt company is dying," Margaret corrected, "so a honest one can be born." She tried to sit up, wincing. "But I need your help." Sarah stepped forward. "We're in prison, Mother. What can we do?" Margaret's eyes sparked with their old strength. "You can choose." Again. Mr. Liu entered with 3 folders. "Your mother has negotiated with the authorities. Due to your exemplary behavior and full cooperation, you're being offered early release. But there are conditions. What have life ever forced you to rebuild something from scratch? How did you find the strength to start over? Share your story in the comments below." Inside each was a detailed plan for saving Chen Holdings, not through financial engineering or market manipulation, but through complete restructuring. Every illegal project would be dismantled, every stolen dollar repaid, every luxury development converted to mixed-income housing. "The company will be smaller," Margaret explained. "Much smaller. We'll lose most of our wealth. Our name will be associated with failure in some circles, but we'll be able to sleep at night." "Why are you giving us this choice?" Michael asked. "Why not just do it?" "Because," Margaret said softly, "you need to be part of rebuilding what you helped break. Real healing requires participation." Zara studied the plans, her prison-taught business law knowledge seeing the complexity behind each proposal. This could take years. Yes, years of hard work, modest living, and public scrutiny. Or, Margaret nodded to Mr. Liu, who produced 3 more folders. "You can serve the remainder of your sentences, walk away with your portions of the current company value, and start fresh somewhere else. Singapore is just one market after all." The choice hung in the air between them. Take the money and run, or stay and rebuild from ashes. Grace touched her mother's hand, feeling the warmth that had been missing during their year of estrangement. "When does the work begin?" "Now," Margaret said. "Even from prison, you'll have access to all documents, but no direct control until your sentences are complete. Consider it an apprenticeship in ethical business." Michael turned from the window. "The press will crucify us again. Chen family destroys generations of wealth." "Let them," Sarah said suddenly. "We've learned the hard way that reputation means nothing without character." Margaret's eyes filled with tears as she watched her children choose integrity over escape for the second time. She pulled out her ever-present notebook, turning to a fresh page. "Then let's begin, Michael. Those gardens you've been tending in prison. I want similar sustainability projects at every Chen property. Grace, the elder care skills you've learned, we're converting that marina development into an affordable senior living community. Sarah, bring me your community housing proposals. Every luxury condo project will be reassessed for social impact." As they worked through the evening, Margaret's color returned. The doctors came and went, smiling at the unusual scene. 3 inmates in prison uniforms, sitting around their mother's hospital bed, planning how to save not just a company, but their family's soul. When the guards finally came to return them to their facilities, each sibling carried pages of notes and tasks. But more importantly, they carried something they'd lost long ago: purpose. 2 more months, Margaret reminded them as they left. 2 months to learn your final lessons in humility. Then the real work begins. That night, in 3 different cells, the Chen siblings lay awake, no longer dreading their remaining sentence, but using it to prepare for the challenge ahead. Dawn would bring not wealth or power, but something far more precious: a chance to make things right. The day of their release dawned with Singapore's characteristic mix of sunshine and storms brewing on the horizon. Margaret stood in the Chen Holdings lobby, watching as her children arrived separately. No media, no fanfare, just 3 individuals ready to begin again. They looked different. Prison had stripped away their artificial layers. Michael's practiced CEO stance had been replaced by a quiet confidence. Grace's designer armor was gone, leaving natural beauty and genuine warmth. Sarah's sharp edges had softened, her ambitious glint transformed into purposeful determination. "Welcome home," Margaret said simply, hugging each one. "Are you ready?" They followed her to the conference room, now transformed. Gone were the expensive artworks and status symbols. The walls instead displayed photos of community projects, architectural plans for affordable housing, and charts tracking social impact rather than just profit margins. "Before we begin," Margaret said, "there's someone you need to meet." The door opened, and an elderly woman entered, supported by Mr. Liu. She was well into her 90s, dressed in simple but elegant traditional clothing. "Grandmother," Grace whispered. Margaret smiled. "You thought she died 15 years ago." Another lesson from the Chen women. Sometimes the best way to understand someone's character is to watch them when they think you're gone. Their grandmother, Lin Mei Chen, took a seat at the head of the table. "I've been living quietly in our ancestral village, watching my great experiment unfold. Your mother learned her lesson in 1 year. You, my grandchildren, needed a harder path." The siblings sat in stunned silence as their grandmother opened a familiar-looking notebook. "Your mother learned her business ethics from me," she continued. "I learned them from my mother, who began as a street vendor selling dumplings. The Chen fortune wasn't built on clever financial schemes. It was built on one simple principle: every business decision must benefit not just ourselves but our community. What family lessons have shaped your values? What wisdom would you pass down to the next generation? Share your thoughts below and join our community of storytellers." She turned to Michael. "You, grandson, found peace in the prison garden. Tell me why." Michael touched his calloused hands. "Because for the first time I was creating something real, something that helped others." "And you, Grace?" "We're in the care center," Grace said softly. "I learned that true wealth isn't in what you have, but in what you give." "Sarah?" "I spent 6 months studying how our actions affected real people," Sarah replied. "I learned that every number on a spreadsheet is connected to a human life." Their grandmother nodded approvingly. "Now you're ready for your inheritance." Mr. Liu distributed new documents. As the siblings read, their eyes widened. "These are patents," Michael said, "hundreds of them. The real source of the Chen fortune," their grandmother explained. "Not property or stocks, but innovations. Green technology, sustainable agriculture, medical breakthroughs, all licensed under fair trade terms to benefit both profit and people." Margaret stepped forward. "While you were focused on quick profits, our R&D departments were quietly revolutionizing industries. That's what you'll be managing now." The storm outside broke, rain lashing against the windows as the siblings absorbed this revelation. The company doesn't need saving, Sarah realized. This was never about money. It was about remembering who we are. Their grandmother confirmed. "The Chen family doesn't build empires. We build futures." She stood, her aged frame straight with dignity. "Your mother and I have decided. Starting tomorrow, you will each head a division of Chen Innovation Labs. Michael, Sustainable Urban Development. Grace, Healthcare Technology. Sarah, Affordable Housing Solutions. But," she held up a weathered hand, "you will also maintain your connections from prison. Michael, your garden project expands to all our properties. Grace, you'll continue volunteering at the care center. Sarah, your community housing council seat remains active." Thunder crashed outside as the magnitude of this turning point hit them. They weren't just regaining their positions, they were being given a chance to redefine what success meant. Margaret opened her notebook one last time. "There's one more thing. The media doesn't know you're being released today. Tomorrow we hold a press conference. You'll announce the new direction of Chen Holdings and take full responsibility for your past actions. No PR spin, no corporate speak, just truth. We'll face public criticism," Michael said, "but not with fear, with acceptance." "Yes," their grandmother smiled, "and you'll meet it with humility and show them what true redemption looks like." Grace wiped away tears. "All this time, you and Mother weren't just teaching us business ethics. We were teaching you to be Chen women and men," their grandmother confirmed. "Strong enough to admit weakness, successful enough to choose integrity over profit, wealthy enough to value things money cannot buy." As the storm raged outside, 4 generations of Chen wisdom filled the room. The siblings' grandmother and mother had orchestrated not just a lesson in business ethics, but a complete restoration of their family's soul. Sarah stood, walking to the window. "The press conference. We should hold it in the community center, we almost demolished. Show people we're serious about change." Michael nodded. "I'll bring produce from the prison garden project, show them what we're building. And I'll invite Mrs. Wong and her friends from the care center, Grace added. Let them see who we've become. Margaret and their grandmother exchanged proud glances. The turning point was complete. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but today, in this room, the Chen legacy was reborn. Not in profit margins or market shares, but in three hearts finally understanding what their family name truly meant. The community center buzzed with nervous energy as hundreds gathered for the Chen family press conference. Local residents sat alongside business reporters, elderly care center residents beside corporate executives. Mrs. Wong, Grace's dumpling-making mentor, occupied a front-row seat, surrounded by fellow care center residents. Behind the makeshift stage, Michael arranged fresh vegetables from his prison garden project on display tables. Grace helped elderly residents find comfortable seats, while Sarah discussed housing plans with former tenants of demolished buildings. Their mother and grandmother watched from the wings, letting them take the lead. As cameras rolled, Michael stepped to the podium first. No designer suit, just a simple white shirt and slacks. The audience fell silent. 6 months ago, I went to prison, he began, his voice clear and steady. Today I'm not here to defend our past actions or announce a corporate comeback. I'm here to tell you about a garden. He gestured to the vegetables. In prison I learned that true growth requires getting your hands dirty. These vegetables fed my fellow inmates. The same men I once would have passed on the street without a glance became my teachers in humility. Grace took her place beside him. In the women's facility, I folded laundry and served meals. Mrs. Wong, she smiled at her elderly friend, taught me that dignity isn't found in designer labels, but in how we treat each other. The care center residents I once displaced became my family. Sarah completed their lineup. I spent 6 months studying the human cost of our business decisions. Every luxury development we built destroyed communities. Today we're announcing the complete restructuring of Chin Holdings, but this isn't a corporate presentation. This is an apology and a promise. The siblings unveiled their new business model. Michael detailed plans for sustainable urban farming integrated into every Chin property. Grace presented healthcare technology initiatives developed in partnership with community clinics. Sarah revealed designs for mixed-income housing that would preserve existing neighborhoods while creating new opportunities. Reporters' hands shot up, questions flying. What about shareholder value? How will this affect market position? Isn't this corporate suicide? Their grandmother stepped forward, commanding attention despite her age. When I was a girl, my mother sold dumplings on the street. She taught me that business without conscience is poison. Today, my grandchildren finally understand this lesson. She gestured to the gathered community members. These people, not shareholders, not market analysts, these are our true stakeholders. Margaret joined her family on stage. Chin Holdings is returning to its roots. Every patent, every project, every profit will be measured by its benefit to the community. We may become smaller, but we will become better. The room erupted in chaos as reporters shouted questions. Then Mrs. Wong stood up. I have a question, she announced, her voice cutting through the noise. 6 months ago, Grace Chin was just another rich girl who wanted to demolish our homes. Now she makes dumplings with me every Sunday. To her family I ask, is this change real? What defines real change in your life? Have you experienced a moment of transformation that others doubted? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for the conclusion of this remarkable journey. Michael stepped forward. The vegetables on that table were grown by my hands. Real change is something you can touch. Grace joined him. The calluses on my hands from community work are real. The lessons in humility are real. Sarah completed their answer. The homes we're building will be real. The communities we're preserving are real. Their grandmother smiled. The Chen family fortune began with my mother's dumpling cart. Today we return to that wisdom. Success isn't measured in dollars, but in lives touched. Suddenly, a commotion arose at the back of the room. Former employees of Chen Holdings, many laid off during the siblings' corrupt reign, streamed in, but instead of anger, they carried proposals, ideas for community projects, sustainable businesses, ethical innovations. We heard about the new direction, their spokesperson said. We want to help rebuild, the right way this time. Margaret opened her ever-present notebook, but this time handed it to her children. Your turn to write our family's next chapter. The siblings looked at each other, then began moving through the crowd. Michael discussed urban farming possibilities with former groundskeepers. Grace consulted with healthcare workers about elderly care innovations. Sarah sat with displaced residents, incorporating their input into housing plans. The media's cameras captured it all, 3 reformed corporate titans sitting on folding chairs, listening more than speaking, learning more than directing. Their grandmother whispered to Margaret, "They're ready." Margaret nodded, watching her children demonstrate what true leadership looked like. Yes, they finally understand. Success isn't owned, it's shared. As the event transformed into an impromptu community planning session, the Chen siblings found themselves surrounded by the very people they'd once ignored. Mrs. Wong taught Michael her dumpling recipe. Former employees shared innovation ideas with Grace. Residents helped Sarah refine her housing plans. The corporate reporters left, their sensational headlines forgotten in favor of a different story, how 3 prisoners came home to become students of their own community. Outside, the Singapore sky cleared after a morning rain. Through the community center's windows, sunlight illuminated a new beginning. Not a corporate restructuring, but a family's redemption, witnessed and embraced by the community they had once wronged. The Chen legacy was no longer built on profit margins and market shares. It was built on vegetables grown with humility, dumplings made with love, and homes created with conscience. Real change at last. 1 year later, the Chen family gathered in their grandmother's restored village home, surrounded by the scent of jasmine and the sound of children playing in the community garden below. The simple wooden table held not corporate reports but dishes prepared by Grace and Mrs. Wong's newly established cooking school. Michael poured tea for everyone, his hands now permanently marked by his work in the urban farming initiative that had transformed Singapore's concrete jungle into a network of productive green spaces. The project employed former inmates, giving them the same second chance he'd received. "Remember last year's press conference?" Sarah asked, passing around her grandmother's dumplings. "Who would have thought that would be the beginning of our most successful year? Just not in the way we used to measure success." The numbers told an unexpected story. Chin Holdings had indeed become smaller, but also more stable. Their new ethical business model attracted partners who shared their values. The innovative patents their grandmother had protected were now licensed to social enterprises worldwide. Margaret opened her notebook, no longer recording failures, but documenting victories. "Shall we share our updates?" Michael went first. "Our urban farming program now feeds thousands of families. We've opened 15 new community gardens, each managed by former inmates or displaced workers. The waiting list for jobs keeps growing. The elderly care centers have become community hubs," Grace added. "Mrs. Wong's cooking classes are oversubscribed. We're opening 5 more centers next month, each with integrated healthcare technology developed by our innovation lab." Zara's eyes sparkled. "The mixed-income housing project is fully occupied. Former luxury condos now house a diverse community. Our residents' council makes all major decisions. We're breaking ground on 3 more developments next week." Their grandmother nodded approvingly. "And your personal growth?" The siblings exchanged glances, remembering how far they'd come. "I visited my old cell last week," Michael said quietly. "Brought vegetables for the garden project. My former cellmate is now our head of sustainable agriculture." Grace touched the simple jade pendant she now wore, a gift from Mrs. Wong. "The care center residents who once feared eviction are now my closest friends. They teach me something new every day about dignity and resilience." "I live in one of our mixed-income developments," Sarah admitted. "My neighbors don't care that I'm a Chen. They care that I show up for community meetings and remember their children's names." Margaret closed her notebook. "Then you're ready for the next step." Mr. Liu, who had become like family, distributed documents outlining the final phase of their transformation. The siblings read them with growing amazement. "You're dividing Chen Holdings into community-owned cooperatives?" Michael asked. "No," their grandmother corrected. "You are. Each of you will guide your division through the transition to partial community ownership. The Chen family will retain enough shares to ensure our ethical principles are maintained, but profits will be shared with workers and community members." "How has your definition of success evolved over time? What legacy do you hope to leave? Join our community and share your journey in the comments below." "The true wealth of the Chen family was never in our bank accounts," Margaret explained. "It was in our ability to improve lives. Your grandmother and I are making it official." Grace understood first. "We're not giving away our fortune. We're returning it to its original purpose." "Exactly," their grandmother smiled. "My mother's dumpling cart supported our entire street. Your great-grandfather's first shop employed half the village. The Chen name has always meant community prosperity." Zara studied the documents. "These cooperatives, they'll be managed by the same people we once ignored. Former employees, community leaders, even past adversaries. The best teachers are often those we wronged."
Margaret said softly. "They show us the way to true redemption." Outside, the village hummed with life. Children played in gardens that once lay fallow. Elderly residents taught young entrepreneurs traditional crafts in modern workshops. Former luxury developments had become thriving communities where every resident had a voice.
The Chen siblings' transformation had rippled outward, touching thousands of lives. Their story of redemption inspired other companies to re-examine their values. Their innovative blend of traditional wisdom and modern business practices became a case study in ethical enterprise. Michael stood and walked to the window, watching a group of former inmates tending the community garden. "We lost our fortune," he mused, "but found our wealth." Grace joined him, observing Mrs. Prong teaching young students the art of dumpling making. "We lost our power but found our purpose." Sarah completed their circle, seeing residents gathering for their evening community meeting. "We lost our pride but found our people." Their grandmother rose, her aged frame still carrying the dignity of generations. "Now you understand. The Chen family doesn't own success. We share it. We don't build empires, we build communities. We don't leave legacies of wealth, we leave legacies of wisdom." Margaret watched her children embrace this final lesson, her heart full. The notebook that had documented their journey from corruption to redemption could finally be closed. Its pages told a story not of business triumph, but of souls reclaimed. "To think," Grace said, helping Mrs. Wong carry in more dumplings, "it took losing everything to find what really mattered." "Not everything," their grandmother corrected. "You never lost our love. Even at your worst, we believed in your best." As evening fell over the village, the Chen family shared a simple meal with their community. No corporate towers loomed overhead. No profit margins demanded attention. No power plays needed planning. Instead, there was laughter with neighbors, wisdom shared across generations, and the quiet satisfaction of living their truth. Michael's gardens would feed thousands more. Grace's care centers would nurture countless souls. Sarah's communities would shelter generations to come. But more importantly, the Chen family name would once again mean what it had 3 generations ago, a promise that success meant nothing if not shared. In her room that night, Margaret made one final entry in her notebook. "My children have come home, not to wealth or power but to themselves. The true Chen fortune is restored, not in what we own but in what we give. Not in what we build, but in who we become." The story of their redemption will be told not in annual reports but in lives transformed, communities strengthened, and wisdom passed down. The greatest inheritance is finally claimed, the understanding that true wealth lies not in our possessions but in our purpose. And so the Chen legacy continues, not in skyscrapers or stock portfolios, but in gardens growing hope, kitchens sharing love, and homes building community. This is our happy ending, not an ending at all, but a new beginning. She closed the notebook for the last time, knowing her children would write their own stories now. Stories of purpose, redemption, and the kind of success that can't be measured in dollars, but in lives touched and wisdom shared. The Chen family had come full circle, back to their grandmother's mother's dumpling cart, where success meant making sure no one went hungry. Some would call it a fall from power. They knew it was a rise to purpose. The end. Thank you for joining us on this journey of redemption and discovery. If this story touched your heart, please share it with others who might need its message of hope and transformation.